Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I must start by apologising for not being with you in person this evening, but I'm sure as avid viewers of the news programmes, you understand why I am not. I'm certain that Gordon Brown, when he insisted that Iceland make payment to the United Kingdom for its bank's misdeeds, I'm sure that he did not envisage the Iceland volcano taking such a momentous revenge on us. 2 years ago, when I was with you, I reviewed and discussed the 15 years previously where I participated in creating one of the world's largest banks in the person of RBS. And we discussed and talked about some of the lessons in leadership that I had learned over that time. Since then, the financial system has gone through a horrendous period, and RBS as well has suffered during that period enormously. And of course, that's been a source of pain to me, but it's also been a reason for reflection, and I felt that tonight my comments should reflect some of my thoughts on that matter. Also, I have some modest suggestions to make for the future. When I talked to you, I emphasised 3 qualities that I felt were necessary in leadership. It was commitment, clarity of communication, and the management of trust. And I think these qualities, particularly the last 2, are especially relevant now, and they matter when you look at the past 3 years. The last 2 qualities, management of trust and clarity of communication, are essentially that of honesty. I mean honesty with your investors, honesty with your staff, honesty with your customers. But perhaps more important than any of that is to be honest with oneself. Basically, over the last 3 years, when one reviews it, one of the most significant things is the ignoring of inconvenient facts. I believe that the most valuable basic ability in a businessman or indeed a banker is to see things as they are, not as you would like them to be. And one has to say there's been a level of self-deception at best, and one has to wonder if more than self-deception has been involved. Did successive United States administrations really believe that the responsibility of home ownership was suitable for 98% of the population? Did state regulators not understand that the remuneration system for mortgage brokers was totally susceptible to fraud? And rating agencies, they would appear to have been more interested in the statistics than in the underlying assets that were being securitized. I question whether a full understanding of the non-recourse nature of these mortgages in certain parts of America was being fully understood. And banking management. They enjoyed a remuneration system which encouraged over much risk-taking and which had little or no downside. Overall, I think we believed because we wanted to believe. We should also look at the role of honesty and clarity in the so-called too big to fail debate. In my view, in modern society, there will always be banks that are too big to fail because of the demands of the large corporates and because of the complexity of modern finance. Such banks enjoy state guarantees. They may be de facto and implicit, but they are there nevertheless because they do pose a systemic risk to the economy. I believe that this should be acknowledged. The guarantees should be made explicit. And indeed, if there is not a lender of last resort, that should also be made explicit. There should be no role for ambiguity. Ambiguity has caused all sorts of problems over the last few years. Examples are Fannie Mae, the Dubai problems, Northern Rock, off-balance sheet special purpose vehicles, PFI. Needless to say, where a bank does pose systemic risk and there is a lender of last resort, there is a price to pay, and that should be in terms of increased capital and increased liquidity. And that brings us to proprietary trading. I've always believed that commercial banks should do a minimum of proprietary trading. I think it is necessary for them to do some in order to satisfy the requirements of their clients for risk avoidance and for currency. But I do not think that banks whose major profit source is proprietary trading should be allowed to grow to the size where they pose a systemic risk. And I think that that has obviously got a lot of implications for the current system. Many Western banks are damaged goods currently. They're being managed in order to satisfy government policy and make up capital requirements. This has led to a breakdown of trust between the bank and its staff, and a breakdown of trust between the bank and its customers. I believe that in any advanced economic society, the network of banks, advisors, customers, and the trust that exists between them and the predictability of their actions is an important asset of that economy. And I believe that we must look to leadership of our banks emerging, which will restore these qualities for the future. Finally, thanks to you all for listening. I apologize for not being with you again. I give my thanks to the Asian Banker for organizing this summit. And I'd ask you all to remember that over the last 15 years, millions of people have been raised from poverty, and that the banks here tonight have played a major role in this global achievement. And I would ask you all to ensure that measures taken in order to prevent future crises do not impede the progress that represents. Thank you very much again.